deadline for teams to put the franchise tag on players. We've seen a couple already. Adam, who are the names we should be focusing on here over the next 24 hours?
Well, I think there's some questions about who's going to get tagged right now. We'll start in Indianapolis. The Colts are trying to get Daniel Jones signed to a long-term deal. If they don't, I think the transition tag could very much be in play here for the Indianapolis Colts. That would be about $8 million less than the franchise tag, but the Colts have two players they really want to keep. Alec Pierce, the wide receiver, Daniel Jones, the quarterback. We'll see how they decide to figure it out here in the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, the New York Jets don't expect to let Breece Hall get out of their building, and they're talking about tagging him if they can't get done a long-term deal. I would think it would be a franchise tag. I know people have brought up the transition tag. I think if they're going to tag Breece Hall, it's probably going to be with a franchise tag, but they're trying to get a deal done by the 4 p.m. Eastern deadline tomorrow. And as for the Seattle Seahawks and the Super Bowl MVP, Kenneth Walker, as we said last week, a couple of weeks ago, unlikely that they're going to tag him. It's looking like he's going to be allowed to test the free agent market. The Seahawks have so many players that they need to retain. They want to re-sign Jackson Smith-Njigba. They want to re-sign Devin Witherspoon. They want to keep together their core. And running backs, as much as they like Kenneth Walker and as much as they know he meant to this team, there's so many needs that have to be addressed and only so many dollars you have to spend, which could result in Walker not being tagged and being allowed to truly test the free agent market next week.
We saw one running back last week re-sign, Javonte Williams in Dallas, but it sounds like Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker in line to get even more than he got, especially if they hit the open market. Mina, what do you think the market looks like for Ken Walker?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he wants and whether or not any team's willing to meet it, especially as you look at the Javonte Williams deal, which was about $8 million per year, right? If Walker wants twice that, and same with Hall, which is a bit more than the tag, that's a tough choice for a team to make. There's a lot of really good, I would call them middle-class free agent running backs. Kenny Gainwell, Tyler Algier, Rico Dowdle, for example, and to pay a premium at the position for a player who's explosive in Walker, but maybe not necessarily efficient, it's going to take a specific type of team that not only has money, but I would say doesn't have many other needs on their roster, competing needs that they want to spend that money on.
Yeah. Jacksonville comes to mind as a potential team if it's not Seattle. I'd also say the Kansas City Chiefs, Carolina Panthers, because of Rico being a free agent. I think the Panthers are interesting for going up and get Jeremiah Love, and we'll get that later in the show as well. But Kenneth Walker's a good back. And, you know, Jacksonville, Travis Etienne is a free agent. And so you're looking at teams that have, you know, these free agent backs that are in good places. I think it's going to come down to Mina's point of like, okay, what back gets what? Is there more money somewhere else? And is there an emotional attachment or a feeling like, oh, you didn't give me what I wanted, this other organization will? Because there's this kind of group of Rico Dowdle, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, probably Walker at the very top of that list. But this is a kind of a group that's going to have to find a home for each other. And I think he'll have a good market. I'd like to see him back in Seattle, but we'll see how much he costs.
We will. Last year, only 2 players got franchise tagged. It was T. Higgins in Cincinnati and Trey Smith, the Kansas City Chiefs guard. Both of them got signed to long-term deals, so nobody had to play on the franchise tag. That's down. There were 8 tags issued in the 2024 offseason and 14 in 2020. 2 is the lowest number since the franchise tag was introduced, or tied the lowest number since the franchise tag was introduced in 1993. So, yeah, we'll see how many more get used in addition to the 2 that I already have. I want to welcome you into NFL Live. If you're just joining us, we started early because of spring training baseball. Last week, Jeremy Fowler and I went to Indianapolis for the Combine, and we put together an article based on some of the stuff we heard at Indianapolis, some of the intel on what some of these teams are planning. So let's start in Minnesota. What are they doing at quarterback? Well, they're trying to thread kind of a tough needle. They're not ready to give up on J.J. McCarthy, 2024 first-round pick, who had a rough year last year, but they don't want to just make him the starter. So they're going to look for a veteran, you know, who can play, but also might be able to get McCarthy's attention, maybe help snap him back into being what they thought he was going to be when they drafted him. So look out if Geno Smith were to get cut in Las Vegas, Kyler Murray were to get cut in Arizona, and they could have them in Minnesota on like a minimum salary type deal. If they don't get somebody like that, maybe Kirk Cousins goes back there. They looked at Joe Flacco last year. They looked at Aaron Rodgers last year. So a lot of options for Minnesota. at the quarterback position. They just don't know what it's going to be. Adam, what more can you add?
Well, Dan, you laid out a lot of quarterback options. And, oh, by the way, great job by you and Jeremy in that notebook. Lots of intel in there. But I would say this, that I think when you're looking at the Vikings quarterbacks, the two most realistic options at this point in time would seem to be Kyler Murray and Geno Smith if he winds up being released in Las Vegas. And that still is up in the air right now. But Kyler Murray's future in Arizona is tenuous at this point in time. If he does get released, he could come in on a cheap contract. And I think the idea of being in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, with J.J. McCarthy would be appealing to Kyler Murray. And it would be a place that would be a destination that would give the Vikings an advantage over the other teams. And the same things that are true for Kyler Murray in Minnesota will be true of Geno Smith if he winds up being released in Las Vegas, which there are no guarantees of that yet. The Raiders have not made a decision. They have to pay him $8.5 million guaranteed money anyway, so they're sorting through whether or not they're going to be keeping Geno, knowing that everybody expects them to take Fernando Mendoza at 1. But no doubt the Vikings are going to be bringing in one of these quarterbacks. It's probably going to be somewhat of an established quarterback, somebody that's going to be cap-friendly to bring in. But there's going to be a quarterback move that's made here in Minnesota in the days to come.
Mina, if it is Kyler Murray, former #1 overall pick, who's had some measure of success in the league as a starter in Arizona, you like that idea for Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love it for Kyler Murray, right? Don't pursue the biggest contract necessarily, pursue the situation, rebuild your value. But I also really like it for Minnesota. Guys, I feel like the league is way too low on Kyler Murray right now based on the way, first, Arizona is obviously willing to absorb a lot of a big cap hit to release him, but also the way he's talked about. When the Vikings signed Sam Darnold, and you look back at the last 2 seasons he played, he had kind of a gap year in San Francisco. Those 2 years before he became a Viking, in QBR and e-paper dropback, he was 44th and 42nd. If you look at Kyler's last 2 years, and so this is just 2024 and 2025, he's dead average. And I'm not even including like his better years in Arizona when he was like a legitimate MVP candidate 4 or 5 years ago. So I would argue that the floor you get with him is a lot higher than people think. And then the ceiling, as we know from his earlier years, is much higher than that. And I think it would be a very smart bet for Minnesota, given that it won't cost a lot. And I'd be interested in seeing it personally.
Yeah, I like Kyler in Minnesota. I don't love Kyler in Minnesota. And this is the reason why. Kyler, in his own words, has said, I still want to be a playmaker. I remember calling Monday Night Football last year and having conversations with Kyler. And how do we get better as an offense? He's like, I need the ball in my hands more. I need to go be a playmaker and use my legs more to impact the game. That's not really how this offense is built to be played. It's not really how Kevin O'Connell wants his quarterback to play. He wants his quarterback to be the point guard. I just need you to be average because everything else is going to be above average. And so the question is, will Kyler get to that? Would he be willing to do that in trying to repair his reputation? Because I would tell you, like, talent-wise, MK, no question, give me Kyler over Geno with where they are right now. Stylistically, I'd probably tell you, give me Geno over Kyler.
Yeah, because he can be that point guard?
Geno's been that. He's been more willing to be that in rhythm, in timing, pocket passer, allow the offense to be the star rather than me. Yeah,
that's kind of the thing, Mina, right? Like these guys that come from that McVay, Shanahan kind of, they know how to get receivers open. It's just a matter of, hey, you got to do what gets us 4 fresh downs, right?
Yeah, I mean, and then you start thinking about names like Mac Jones. If he was a free agent, Dan, I would have thrown his name out there.
Sure.
He'd be my number 1 guy.
And everything we're hearing suggests San Francisco is going to ask for quite a bit to part ways with him, understandably, given their injury history. And I think that, to me, really, as much as from a scheme perspective it makes sense, I don't know about giving up, serious draft capital for a Mac Jones over those other 2 guys just because of the total value proposition.
Yeah, there's 2 teams that I would be kind of convinced would be ideal places for Mac Jones, Atlanta being one and Minnesota being the other. If I'm Minnesota, I still am of the thought process, I need a starting quarterback. Yeah. I don't want somebody to come in and maybe compete with JJ. I can still believe in JJ. I can still have a hopeful future for JJ. You can't waste 2 years in a row of Hall of Fame wide receiver. So if I'm Minnesota, yes, the first call is I'm calling San Francisco. Is it even a thought? What would it cost? And then I do think you have to have the Aaron Rodgers conversation. Again, I do think that Aaron Rodgers can play good, solid football. Now, if you told me no because you've moved on because of the age, I understand that. But those are probably my first 2 calls in this situation. I know Schefter's going to tell me, Dan, stop talking about Mac Jones. I'm still making the call.
Shefty, is that what you're going to tell Dan?
Well, Dan, I'm going to say this. Like, the Niners have no intention of trading Mac Jones, and I don't know whether it's the fact that other teams know that they won't do that or the fact that they're concerned that the price might be too high, but there hasn't been exactly a whole lot of calls, incoming calls and activity about it. Look, they don't want to trade him. They don't intend to trade him. But as we're seeing with Max Crosby and A.J. Brown, 2 players who their teams also don't want to, you'll always listen, but the price would have to be right. And no team so far has been willing to make an offer that would make the 49ers even think about doing anything, which is why I think we're back to the same spot with Mac Jones being in San Francisco, which is what they want, with no interest in moving on from him. Aaron Rodgers, again, I think the Steelers have been waiting for an answer middle of this month. The free agent market begins next week. So if you're Aaron Rodgers, you can't, well, you can, but it's not ideal to drag it out till the summer the way he did last year. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers with a new head coach would like an answer sooner rather than later. And the feeling is that they'll probably get an answer sooner rather than later. And we'll see whether or not Aaron Rodgers comes out of retirement or free agency or however you want to call it to play another season.
Well, Pittsburgh needs an answer, but so does Minnesota, just to put a button on that. They were 29th in